The metallic chime of the door scanner pierced the quiet of Lieutenant Commander Nathan Reed's office aboard the Earth Embassy station. He looked up from his holographic display, where mission reports and diplomatic briefings competed for his attention. The pristine white walls and sleek furnishings of his office reflected the station's cutting-edge design, a testament to humanity's rapid advancement since first contact. "Enter," he called out, straightening his midnight blue uniform adorned with the silver insignia of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a sight that made him pause. A tall, graceful figure stepped through the doorway. Her skin had a subtle iridescent quality, shifting between deep azure and violet depending on how the light struck it. Intricate patterns, like constellations, decorated her temples and followed the curve of her cheekbones. Her eyes, completely silver with no visible pupils, somehow managed to convey both wisdom and uncertainty. "Lieutenant Commander Reed," she spoke, her voice carrying musical undertones that human vocal cords could never produce. "I am Vera, your assigned Procyon liaison for the Interstellar Integration Initiative." She performed the traditional Procyon greeting, pressing her palms together before her chest and inclining her head slightly. Nathan rose from his desk, returning the gesture with careful precision. He'd studied Procyon customs extensively, but this was his first direct interaction with one of their diplomats. "Welcome to Earth Embassy Station, Vera. I wasn't informed about receiving a liaison." A slight ripple passed through the patterns on her skin, a sign of nervousness, Nathan recalled from his cultural briefings. The decision was made rather abruptly by the Procyon High Council. They believe that for true integration to succeed, we must work together more closely than mere formal diplomatic channels allow. Nathan gestured to one of the chairs facing his desk. As Vera took her seat, he noticed how she moved with an almost liquid grace, her formal attire, a flowing garment that seemed to shimmer between states of matter, settling around her like stardust. "I appreciate the initiative," Nathan said carefully, "but typically such assignments go through proper channels. There are protocols. Protocols that both our species have become perhaps too comfortable hiding behind," Vera interjected, her silver eyes meeting his directly. "That is precisely why I'm here, Lieutenant Commander. 5 years after first contact, we still treat each other like delicate artifacts that might shatter at the slightest misstep. The High Council believes it's time for a more direct approach." Nathan studied her for a moment, noting the subtle signs of determination in her posture. He'd spent years navigating the delicate dance of interspecies diplomacy, always careful, always measured. But she had a point, perhaps they had all become too cautious. "Tell me, Vera, what exactly does this liaison position entail?" The patterns on her skin shifted to a more dynamic configuration, excitement or relief, possibly both. "I am to work alongside you in all diplomatic matters, offering the Procyon perspective while learning the human approach. More importantly, I am to help bridge the gap between our cultures through direct experience and interaction." Nathan leaned back in his chair, considering the implications. His office had always been his sanctuary, a place where he could carefully craft diplomatic responses and maintain the precise control needed for interstellar relations. Having a Procyon liaison would change everything, and maybe that was exactly what they all needed. "Very well," he said finally. "But we'll need to establish some ground rules and clear this with Earth Command." The patterns on Vera's skin rippled again, but this time in what he recognized as amusement. "Already done, Lieutenant Commander. Your superiors approved my position this morning. They seemed quite enthusiastic about the prospect." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "You went over my head?" "I went through proper channels," she corrected, her expression becoming what he assumed was the Procyon equivalent of a smile. "Just not in the order you might have expected. Procyons believe in being thorough." Despite himself, Nathan felt a smile tugging at his own lips. This was certainly going to be interesting. "Then I suppose we should get started. There's a diplomatic conference with the Centaurian delegation in 2 hours. Care to jump right in? Vera rose smoothly from her chair. That is precisely why I'm here, Lieutenant Commander. Though perhaps, given our new working relationship, you might consider using my name rather than my species? Only if you'll call me Nathan, he responded, surprising himself with the offer. The patterns on her skin shifted to a harmonious configuration he hadn't seen before. Agreed. Nathan. As they began reviewing the conference preparations together, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that this unexpected assignment would change far more than just his daily routine. The universe, it seemed, had its own ideas about protocol. The gleaming corridors of Earth Embassy Station hummed with nervous energy. 3 weeks into their partnership, Nathan found himself stealing glances at Vera as they walked side by side toward the main conference chamber. The morning security briefing had left him uneasy, and her usually smooth pattern seemed to reflect his concern, shifting in irregular pulses. Another communication blackout with the Centaurian colony, Nathan muttered, keeping his voice low. That's the third one this month. Something doesn't add up. Vera's silver eyes flickered with concern. The official explanation cites solar interference, but the timing is convenient. Especially with the trade negotiations approaching. They passed through a security checkpoint, the scanners washing over them with pale blue light. Nathan noticed how the human security staff's eyes lingered on Vera longer than necessary. Despite weeks of working together, some still viewed her presence with suspicion. Ambassador Theron wants us to proceed as if everything's normal, Nathan said as they entered his office. But I can't shake the feeling we're missing something crucial. The door sealed behind them with a soft click. Vera moved to the window, her reflection overlaying the vast starfield beyond. Nathan, there's something I need to show you. Her voice carried an undercurrent of tension he'd never heard before. She produced a small crystalline device from her robes. As she activated it, a holographic display materialized between them, showing what appeared to be encrypted transmission logs. These were intercepted by Procyon intelligence 2 days ago. They didn't want me to share this with you, but... The patterns on her skin rippled with uncertainty. Nathan stepped closer, studying the data streams. These are coming from inside the station. His eyes widened as he processed the implications. Someone's been feeding information to an outside source. Not just anyone, Vera said softly. The encryption signature matches known patterns used by the Stellar Purity movement. Nathan's jaw tightened. He'd heard whispers about the movement, a shadowy organization of extremists from multiple species who opposed interstellar cooperation. They believed each species should remain isolated, developing independently without contamination from others. If they're operating within the station. He left the thought unfinished, running a hand through his dark hair in frustration. It gets worse. Vera manipulated the hologram, revealing more data. The transmission patterns suggest they're planning something. Something big, timed to coincide with the upcoming Unity Summit. Nathan paced the office, mind racing. The Unity Summit would bring together representatives from 12 different species. If the Stellar Purity movement was planning an attack. We need to take this to station security. We can't. Vera's patterns shifted to a deep, troubled configuration. Not yet. If we do, whoever's behind this will know we're onto them. And Nathan. She hesitated. I wasn't supposed to share this intelligence with you at all. If the Procyon High Council discovers I breached protocol. Nathan stopped pacing and turned to face her. You risked your position to tell me this. Why? The patterns on her skin rippled with complex emotions he couldn't fully interpret. Because in these past weeks, you've shown me that true cooperation requires trust. And because. She met his gaze directly. I trust you, Nathan. The weight of her words hung in the air between them. Nathan realized with sudden clarity that their partnership had evolved into something neither of their governments had anticipated, a genuine bond of trust that transcended diplomatic protocols. Then we handle this ourselves, he decided. At least until we have enough evidence to present a solid case. He moved to his desk, pulling up the station's security protocols. We'll need access to the internal monitoring systems. Vera joined him, her shoulder brushing his as she leaned in to study the display. The Procyon encryption techniques I know could help mask our investigation. And I know which security officers we can trust, Nathan added. But we'll have to be careful. One wrong move. And we could trigger an interstellar incident, Vera finished. Or worse, tip off the perpetrators. Nathan found himself acutely aware of her presence beside him, the subtle glow of her skin casting patterns on his display screen. They were about to cross lines that could end both their careers, or possibly prevent a catastrophe. We should establish a secure communication channel, Vera suggested, her fingers dancing over the holographic interface. Something they won't expect or be able to monitor. I think I know just the thing. Nathan pulled up an old Earth encryption protocol, one that predated first contact. Sometimes the best hiding place is in plain sight. As they worked together to establish their covert operation, Nathan couldn't help but wonder how they'd reached this point. 3 weeks ago, he'd been worried about maintaining proper diplomatic distance. Now he was planning an unauthorized investigation with her, putting everything on the line based on nothing but trust. The irony wasn't lost on him. In trying to prevent the collapse of interstellar cooperation, they were breaking nearly every protocol that governed it. But as he glanced at Vera, seeing the determination in her silver eyes and the purposeful shift of her patterns, he knew they were making the right choice. The station's artificial day cycle began to dim, signaling the approach of evening, but neither of them moved to leave. They had work to do, and time was running out. The maintenance shaft was cramped for Nathan's human frame, but Vera moved through it with natural grace. Their breath fogged in the cold air as they crawled toward the station's primary communication array. After a week of covert investigation, they'd traced the suspicious transmissions to this section of the station. The signal strength increases beyond that junction, Vera whispered, her skin patterns dimmed to their lowest luminescence to avoid detection. The soft glow was barely enough to illuminate the path ahead. Nathan checked his wrist display, showing a three-dimensional map of the station's infrastructure. Security patrol passes through the adjacent corridor every 15 minutes. We have 12 minutes until the next sweep. They reached a junction where several data conduits converged. Vera produced a scanning device from her robes, Procyon technology far more sophisticated than anything humans had developed. As she worked, Nathan kept watch, every noise making him tense. Nathan, Vera's voice carried a note of urgency. Look at this. He turned to see a holographic representation floating above her scanner. What appeared to be a standard data relay node had been modified with unfamiliar technology. Is that what I think it is? A quantum interference device, Vera confirmed, her patterns shifting with concern. It's designed to create artificial communication blackouts while simultaneously transmitting encoded data bursts. This is far more advanced than anything the stellar purity movement should have access to. Nathan frowned, studying the device. Someone with high-level clearance must be involved. This equipment requires authorization codes to install. He paused as a thought struck him. Wait, the timing of the blackouts. They always seem to coincide with Ambassador Theron's private meetings, Vera finished, their minds arriving at the same conclusion. A sudden noise from the corridor made them both freeze. The security patrol wasn't due for another 8 minutes. Nathan switched off his display, plunging them into near-total darkness save for Vera's dim bioluminescence. Footsteps approached their position. Through a small ventilation grate, Nathan caught glimpses of shadows moving in the corridor. The voices that drifted up were hushed but distinct. The device is functioning as planned, a voice said, one Nathan recognized as belonging to Senior Communications Officer Darius Blake. When the Unity Summit begins, we'll have complete control over all external communications. Excellent, replied a second voice that made Nathan's blood run cold, Ambassador Theron himself. Our associates will be pleased. The summit will demonstrate just how fragile this so-called unity truly is. The footsteps and voices faded, but Nathan and Vera remained motionless for several long moments. Finally, Vera spoke, her voice barely a whisper. We need to document everything. The Council will require irrefutable evidence. Evidence won't matter if we don't make it out of here, Nathan replied, checking his display again. The next security patrol is due in 4 minutes, and now we know some of them might be compromised. Vera's patterns shifted in what he'd learned to recognize as determination. I can download the device's command logs, but it will take time. Do it, Nathan decided. I'll keep watch. As Vera worked, Nathan's mind raced through the implications of what they'd discovered. The ambassador himself was involved in a plot to sabotage the Unity Summit. But why? Theron had been one of the strongest advocates for interstellar cooperation. A soft chime from Vera's scanner indicated the download was complete. I have everything, but... Her patterns rippled with distress. Nathan, according to these logs, this isn't the only device. There are at least 5 others installed throughout the station. The sound of approaching footsteps cut off any response. This time it was the regular security patrol, right on schedule. They pressed themselves against the shaft's cold wall, hardly daring to breathe as lights swept past the ventilation grate. Once the patrol passed, they began their careful retreat through the maintenance shaft. Nathan's muscles ached from the confined space, but adrenaline kept him moving. They emerged into a seldom-used storage area, finally able to stand. We need to find the other devices, Nathan said, rolling his shoulders to ease the tension. But we have to assume Blake has access to all security protocols. One wrong move and... He stopped as Vera suddenly stepped closer, her patterns shifting to a warning configuration. Before he could ask why, she pressed herself against him, just as the storage room's door slid open. A startled maintenance worker stood in the doorway, staring at what appeared to be an intimate moment between a human and a Procyon. Sorry, I didn't. The worker stammered, quickly backing out. The door slid shut, leaving them in silence. Vera stepped back, her patterns showing what Nathan had learned was embarrassment. I apologize. It seemed the safest way to avoid suspicion. Better they think we were seeking privacy than discovering surveillance equipment. Nathan felt his own face flush. Quick thinking, he managed, trying to ignore how natural it had felt to hold her. We should split up for now. Meeting in my office would be too obvious. The auxiliary observation deck, Vera suggested. It's usually empty during 3rd shift. We can review the data there. Nathan nodded. 200 hours. And Vera. He caught her arm as she turned to leave. Be careful. If they realize what we know. Her patterns shifted to a configuration he'd never seen before, complex and somehow beautiful. You as well, Nathan. She touched his hand briefly before slipping away, leaving him to wonder if he'd imagined the lingering warmth of her touch. As he made his way back to his office through alternate routes, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The Unity Summit was only days away, and somewhere in the station, Ambassador Theron was preparing to destroy everything they'd worked for. But for the first time since this began, Nathan felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever they faced, he and Vera would face it together, protocol and propriety be damned. The Unity Summit's opening ceremony was less than 6 hours away when Nathan's secure communicator vibrated against his wrist. He'd been reviewing security protocols in his quarters, unable to sleep. The message was brief: they're moving early. Meet me at Control Junction 7. Now. Nathan was moving before he finished reading Vera's message. He grabbed his diplomatic credentials and a small device they'd modified with Procyon encryption technology. The station's night cycle meant the corridors were relatively empty as he made his way to the maintenance level, using access codes that weren't strictly within his authority. Vera was waiting at their rendezvous point, her skin patterns shifting with urgent pulses. "Blake's team is initializing the interference devices," she said without preamble. "They're not waiting for the summit to begin. Why accelerate their timeline?" Nathan wondered aloud, following her through the access tunnel they'd previously mapped out. "Because they know we're close," Vera replied, her silver eyes reflecting the dim emergency lighting. "I intercepted a partial transmission. They've detected our probe of their systems." They reached a junction where multiple maintenance shafts converged. Nathan pulled up the station schematics they'd modified with the locations of the known interference devices. "If they activate all 5 simultaneously." 6, Vera corrected grimly. "I found another one near the primary life support systems. This isn't just about disrupting communications anymore. They're planning to create a station-wide crisis." Nathan's blood ran cold as he understood the implications. Panic during evacuation procedures would justify a security lockdown. They could claim it was necessary for safety. While actually isolating the diplomatic delegations, Vera finished. Making them vulnerable. A distant clang echoed through the maintenance shaft. They both tensed, but no further sounds followed. Time was running out. "We need to split up," Nathan said, though everything in him rebelled against the idea. "It's the only way to reach all the devices in time." Vera's patterns shifted in what he now recognized as profound concern. "Nathan, these devices. I've analyzed the data more thoroughly. They're not just interference generators. If improperly deactivated, they're capable of releasing an electromagnetic pulse that could devastate the station's systems. Then we'll have to be very careful not to deactivate them improperly," Nathan replied with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. He pulled up the schematics again. "I'll take the 3 in the upper levels. You handle the ones near life support and primary communications." Vera caught his arm before he could move. "Wait." She pressed something into his hand, a small crystal that pulsed with a soft light matching her skin patterns. "A Procyon life link. It will let me know if..." She didn't finish the sentence. Nathan closed his fingers around the crystal, feeling its warm pulse. "I'll see you when this is over," he promised. They parted ways, each racing against time through the station's mechanical arteries. Nathan reached the first device without incident, carefully applying the deactivation sequence they'd developed. The second proved more challenging, requiring him to bypass a security patrol. As he approached the location of the third device, his communicator vibrated again. "Nathan." Vera's voice was tight with tension. "Blake's team, they're here. They're trying to trigger an early activation." "Get out of there," Nathan urged, picking up his pace. "I can't. If this device activates, it will cascade through the entire network." "The station." Her transmission cut off in a burst of static. Nathan's heart pounded as he ran, no longer caring about stealth. The crystal in his pocket pulsed steadily, telling him Vera was still alive, but for how long? He burst into the primary communications hub just as alarms began blaring throughout the station. Ambassador Theron stood at a control panel, flanked by Blake and 2 security officers. Vera was cornered near one of the interference devices, her skin patterns flaring with defensive energy. "Lieutenant Commander Reed," Theron said smoothly. "I'm disappointed but not surprised to find you involved in this unfortunate situation." "It's over, Ambassador," Nathan replied, carefully positioning himself to draw attention away from Vera. "We have proof of everything, the sabotage, the communications blackouts, your connections to the Stellar Purity movement." "Proof?" Theron laughed. "By the time anyone receives your evidence, this station will be in chaos. The Unity Summit will end before it begins, and everyone will see that true cooperation between species is nothing but a dangerous fantasy. You're wrong, Vera spoke up, her voice carrying that musical quality that still captivated Nathan. What you're about to destroy isn't just some political arrangement. It's the future that all our peoples could build together. Nathan saw her patterns shift in a specific sequence, one they developed as a signal. He kept his expression neutral as she continued speaking, drawing everyone's attention. Look at your own actions, she went on. Humans and Proxians working together to sabotage this summit. Isn't that proof itself that we're already more integrated than you'd like to admit? As she spoke, Nathan's fingers flew over his modified communicator, transmitting emergency codes to station security. But Theron must have noticed something in his movement. Enough. The ambassador raised a weapon, not a standard-issue stunner, but something that hummed with deadly energy. I won't let decades of careful planning be undone by a pair of idealistic fools. Time seemed to slow as Theron's finger tightened on the trigger. Nathan saw the weapon's targeting system lock onto Vera, saw her patterns flare in anticipation of the impact. Without conscious thought, he threw himself forward, even as Vera raised her hands, unleashing a burst of Procyon defensive energy. The world exploded in light and sound. The medical bay's soft blue lighting cast gentle shadows across Nathan's face as consciousness slowly returned. His first sensation was warmth against his palm, the Procyon lifelink crystal, still pulsing steadily. His second was the feeling of someone holding his other hand. Your timing with that defensive burst was perfect, he managed to say, opening his eyes to find Vera seated beside his bed. Her skin patterns shifted rapidly through relief, joy, and something deeper he wasn't quite ready to name. And your timing with the security alert was impeccable, she replied, her silver eyes gleaming. Though next time, perhaps we could defeat the conspirators without you intercepting an energy weapon blast? Nathan tried to sit up, wincing at the stiffness in his muscles. What happened after? After you demonstrated either remarkable bravery or questionable judgment? Vera's patterns rippled with what he now recognized as affectionate teasing. The security team you alerted arrived just as Theron's weapon overloaded against my defensive field. The combination of energies knocked you unconscious, but also shorted out the interference devices before they could activate. She helped him adjust his position, her touch lingering longer than strictly necessary. Theron and Blake are in custody. More importantly, the evidence we gathered exposed the entire stellar purity movement network within the diplomatic corps. The Unity Summit proceeded as planned, in fact, it's entering its third day. 3 days? Nathan blinked in surprise. How long was I out? Long enough for both our governments to review the situation thoroughly. A new voice joined their conversation as Admiral Reeves entered the medical bay. The stern-faced woman was head of station security and not known for making social calls. Nathan tried to straighten to attention, but the Admiral waved him back. At ease, Lieutenant Commander. Or should I say Commander? Your promotion paperwork is already processed. Promotion? Nathan glanced at Vera, who was failing to suppress what appeared to be a smug expression. It seems, the Admiral continued, that uncovering a major conspiracy and preventing an interstellar incident warrants some recognition. Though in the future, I'd appreciate being informed of such investigations before they reach the dramatic showdown stage. Yes, ma'am, Nathan replied. Though in our defense, we weren't sure who we could trust. Which brings me to the other reason for my visit. Admiral Reeves produced a data pad. The Interstellar Council has decided that your unorthodox partnership proved remarkably effective. They're establishing a new joint task force for internal security and diplomatic operations. They want you both to lead it. Nathan and Vera exchanged glances. Both of us? Vera asked. Indeed. The Admiral's stern expression softened slightly. It seems you've demonstrated that humans and Proxians can work together quite effectively. The Council feels your partnership could serve as a model for future integration efforts. She set the data pad on Nathan's bed. Review the details and let me know your decision by tomorrow. With a knowing look between them, she turned and left. Silence fell in the medical bay. Nathan found himself still holding Vera's hand, her skin patterns creating mesmerizing displays of light between their intertwined fingers. A permanent partnership, he said finally, testing the words. It would mean continuing to break with traditional protocols, Vera pointed out, though her patterns betrayed her excitement. I think we've established that some protocols are meant to be broken. Nathan squeezed her hand gently. Besides, I still have a lot to learn about Procyon culture. Oh? Her patterns shifted to a teasing configuration. Such as whether Proxians have their own version of asking someone to dinner. For non-diplomatic purposes. Vera's patterns exploded in a dazzling display of joy and something that definitely matched what he felt in his own heart. I believe we could find a suitable cultural exchange program for that purpose. Nathan found himself grinning. Good. Because I think saving the station from conspirators makes for a decent first date, but I'd like to try something more traditional for the second. Vera laughed, the sound like distant wind chimes. Always the diplomat, searching for the perfect compromise. Not always, Nathan corrected, finally giving voice to what had been building between them. Sometimes, when something is truly important, you have to be willing to take a leap of faith. Her free hand came up to trace the line of his jaw, her touch sending pleasant shivers through him. Then I look forward to taking that leap together. Through the medical bay's window, the stars shone steadily, bearing witness to a new kind of unity, one forged not through careful protocols and diplomatic measures, but through trust, courage, and the simple truth that love knows no boundaries, not even those between the stars. The Procyon lifelink crystal pulsed warmly between their joined hands, its rhythm matching the beating of their hearts, as they began to write the next chapter of their story together.